and ask him, which court did you mean? Because that's the big question on the table. He could go to a larger portion of the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court. But guess what? As of a year ago, we're down to 8 justices. And I think you're probably going to need 5 to secure a victory in this case.
I'm sure he's being counseled to pull it back.
Like Kellyanne Conway counseled?
And to review the executive order and to make it clearer and less broad. But the question is, he may be being advised to do that by some of his counsel.
But will he listen?
But will he listen? Because he never admits he made a mistake, ever.
But also,
so maybe he'll blame it on the judges, or he'll blame it on his attorneys at the Justice Department.
One of the things that was absent, and maybe this will come up again today, is what is the evidence behind why the executive order was needed? What is the specific threat that means that the United States has to move with such a
All
alacrity?
right, they're being introduced right now. People are standing up. The Prime Minister of Japan, the President of the United States. They'll both have opening statements beginning with the President.
Thank you very much. Prime Minister Abe, on behalf of the American people, I welcome you to the very famous White House. You honor us with your presence. This is one of our earliest visits from a foreign leader, and I am truly glad that it could be from such an important and steadfast ally. The bond between our two nations and the friendship between our two peoples runs very, very deep. This administration is committed to bringing those ties even closer. We are committed to the security of Japan and all areas under its administrative control, and to further strengthening our very crucial alliance. The U.S.-Japan alliance is the cornerstone of peace and stability in the Pacific region. It is important that both Japan and the United States continue to invest very heavily in the alliance to build up our defense and our defensive capabilities, which under our mutual leadership will become stronger and stronger. And as time goes by, ultimately they will be impenetrable. We face numerous challenges, and bilateral cooperation is essential. Our country is committed to being an active and fully engaged partner. We will work together to promote our shared interests, of which we have many, in the region, including freedom from navigation and of navigation, and defending against the North Korean missile and nuclear threat, both of which I consider a very, very high priority. On the economy, we will seek a trading relationship that is free, fair, and reciprocal, benefiting both of our countries. The vibrant exchange between us is a true blessing. Japan is a proud nation with a rich history and culture, and the American people have profound respect for your country and its traditions. I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. Prime Minister, to thank you and the people of Japan for hosting our armed forces. Working together, our two countries have the ability to bring greater harmony, stability, and prosperity to the Pacific region and beyond, improving countless lives in the process. We are committed to that goal, highly committed. Prime Minister Abe, on behalf of the United States of America, I thank you for being with us today. We will soon be traveling to the great state of Florida, where I know we will have a long and very successful talk, negotiations, and a very, very productive weekend. Mr. Prime Minister.
This is the fourth time in 6 months for me to visit the United States. The last time was in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, at the end of last year. I am indeed sincerely grateful for the always heartwarming welcome accorded to me by the American people. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to President Trump. Donald, you must have been very busy in this very important the period of 100 days after your inauguration. And thank you very much for inviting me over to the White House. My name is Abe, but in the United States, some people mistakenly pronounce my name as Abe, but that is not bad, because even in Japan, everybody knows the name of that great president. That farmer carpenter's son can become a president, and that fact, 150 years ago, surprised the Japanese who were still under the shogunate rule. The Japanese opened their eyes to democracy. The United States is the champion of democracy. Donald, President, you are excellent businessmen, but you have never been in the Congress or being a governor. You have not experienced being in the public office, but you have fought the uphill struggle and fight for more than a year in the election campaign to become a new president, and this is the dynamism of democracy. I would like to celebrate and congratulate Donald being sworn in as the president. The United States is a country having the largest number of chances, opportunities in the world. That has always been the case right now as well as going forward. This will never change. And that is the reason why automotive industries and other Japanese businesses have built factories all over the United States to engage in local production here. Last year, from Japan to the United States, there have been more than $150 billion of new investment being made into the United States. And those Japanese businesses have created large number of jobs. The mutually beneficial economic relations have been built by Japan and the United States. With President Trump taking on the leadership, I'm sure there will be major-scale infrastructure investment will be made, including the fast-speed train. Those of you who have rode on the Japanese Shinkansen, I'm sure you would appreciate the speed, the comfort, and safety. With the latest maglev technology from the Washington, D.C. To New York, where Trump Tower exists, only 1 hour would it take if you ride the maglev train from Washington, D.C. to New York. Japan, with our high level of technical capability, we will be able to contribute to President Trump's growth strategy. There will be even more new jobs being born in the United States. To further deepen the bilateral economic relations between Deputy Prime Minister Aso and Vice President Pence, there will be a cross-sectoral dialogue to be held, and we have agreed on this. And furthermore, in Asia-Pacific, where we see dramatic growth, to expand free trade and investment, this will be a big chance for both Japan and the United States. But of course, it must be done in a fair manner. Never should a state-owned company backed by state capital should not make any economic intervention. Free ride on intellectual property should not be condoned. In Asia-Pacific region, with Japan and U.S. taking on the leadership to create free and fair market based upon rules should be built. I and President Trump has confirmed on our strong will to do so. the cornerstone of peace and prosperity in Asia Pacific. That is the strong Japan-US alliance. And this is an unwavering ties between our two countries. I and President Trump will work together to further strengthen our alliance. We have shared this strong resolve. As we see increasingly difficult security environment, we have confirmed that U.S.-Japan Security Pact Article 5 will be applied to Senkaku Islands. The United States will strengthen its presence in the region, and under the banner of the proactive contribution to peace, Japan will play a greater role. At the same time, we will maintain the deterrence and also to proceed on reducing the impact. We will fought through on the realignment of the U.S. forces in Japan. And Henoko's relocation to Henoko of the MCAS Futenma is the only solution, and Japan and U.S. will continue to work closely on this. On North Korea, we would strongly demand North Korea to abandon nuclear and ballistic missile the program, and not to make any more provocations. And we have completely agreed on the importance of the early solution for the abduction issue in East China Sea, South China Sea, and Indian Ocean. Everywhere, we need to maintain the freedom of navigation and the rule of law, and such international order that must to be maintained. Japan and United States have confirmed that we will strongly protest any use of force as well as the coercion to change the status quo. I and the President will address not only bilateral but regional issues, and we have had a very frank exchange of views on the peace and prosperity of the world that we should contribute. For any form of terrorism should be strongly condemned, and we would cooperate in our fight against terrorism. Japan will, of course, exercise a commensurate role in this regard. And furthermore, the regional conflict, the refugees, poverty, and infectious diseases, there are many challenges faced by the world, which will be a serious issue to threaten the peace and stability for Japan as well as the United States. But Japan and the United States and the international community must work hand in hand in order to solve these questions. Of course, there are disagreements, but we should not close down the dialogue just by pointing to the differences and ignoring the common interests and common goals. We need to have a dialogue because there are disagreements. What we most desire, what is most desired by those who are challenging the existing international order, is to just focus on differences. We should not close the dialogue. Japan have for 4 years, I have consistently fought through on our foreign policy. Now, whatever the challenge and difficulty ahead of us, I and President Trump will continue our dialogue to seek shared solutions. And after lunch, I'm looking forward for a weekend in Florida with Donald. We will play golf together. My scores in golf is not up to the level of Donald at all. But my policy is never up, never in, always aiming for the cup, never to just go with the shortcuts and the chops. Those are the words never found in my dictionary. But in a relaxed atmosphere, I hope to take time to discuss with Donald on the future of the world, future of the region, and future of Japan and the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take a few questions, unless you don't want to ask any questions, if that's possible. Maybe we'll start. Where is Daniel Halper, New York Post? Daniel?
I'm curious about yesterday's ruling in the Ninth Circuit Court. Has it caused you to rethink your use of executive power, and how will you respond, and will you sign new executive orders and perhaps a new travel ban? And Mr. Prime Minister, I'm curious about your reaction to America's withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. Do you think that that's weakened America's position in Asia, and how do you envision any sort of trade deal with the President working out?
Well, your question was unrelated to what we're here for today, but I'll answer it. We are going to keep our country safe. We are going to do whatever is necessary to keep our country safe. We had a decision which we think we'll be very successful with. It shouldn't have taken this much time because safety is a primary reason. One of the reasons I'm standing here today is the security of our country. The voters felt that I would give it the best security. So we'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week. In addition, we will continue to go through the court process, and ultimately I have no doubt that we'll win that particular case.
Now, in the world, we are also facing the issues of the refugees and terrorism. We need to work closely together on these global issues. Japan, they have always played our own role, but going forward, we would continue to work with the international community to execute our responsibility in a commensurate manner. And each of our country has immigration control scheme, as well as policy on immigration, as well as refugees. These are to do with domestic affairs of that country, so I would refrain from making any comments.
Okay, Blake Berman, Fox, Blake Berman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to pick up where Daniel left off, if you don't mind. You said earlier this week, and I'm quoting for you, you said, "I've learned a lot in the last 2 weeks, and terrorism is a far greater threat than the people of our country understand, but we're going to take care of it." Based off of what you have learned, and now knowing that your executive order is at least temporarily on hold, do you still feel as confident now as you have been at any point that you and the administration will be able to protect the homeland? And Mr. Prime Minister, thank you. I would just like to pick up again on what Daniel had asked about TPP. Do you feel it's a mistake that the United States has at least signaled its intention to withdraw from the deal? Thank you both.
I feel totally confident that we will have tremendous security for the people of the United States. We will be extreme vetting, which is a term that I developed early in my campaign because I saw what was happening. And while I've been president, which is just for a very short period of time, I've learned tremendous things that you could only learn, frankly, if you were in a certain position named president. And there are tremendous threats to our country. We will not allow that to happen. I can tell you that right now. We will not allow that to happen. So we'll be going forward. We'll be doing things to continue to make our country safe. It will happen rapidly, and we will not allow people into our country who are looking to do harm to our people. We will allow lots of people into our country that will love our people and do good for our country. It's always going to be that way, at least during my administration. I can tell you that.
TPP については On TPP, of course, we are fully aware of President Trump's decision. On economic issues, we will be discussing at the working lunch to follow. As for Japan and the United States, trade and investment, as well as economic relations, how can we develop and grow our relationship? As I have already mentioned, Deputy Prime Minister Aso and Vice President Pence will create a new framework for dialogue. And I am quite optimistic that the good results will be seen from the dialogue. Now, for the free and fair common set of rules to be created for the free trade regime in the region, and that was the purpose of TPP, and that the importance have not changed. I myself believe that.
Okay.
原さん。
ございます。NHK の原と申します。
Thank you. My name is Hara from NHK. I have a question to Prime Minister Abe. Now, for the automotive market in Japan, as well as foreign exchange of Japan, in the prior remarks, there have been discrepancy in your positions. So at the summit meeting, what were the discussions, and were you able to narrow down the gap? And President Trump had said that he will make United States a great country. What is meant by the great country? And Prime Minister, what do you mean when you say United States is a great ally for you? Now, with the birth of the Trump administration, the new genesis will be built between Japan and U.S. in economic relations. In order to put forward such strong message, I have proposed to launch a new framework for economic dialogue, and we were able to agree on this. As for sectoral discussions, we will be having a discussion at our working lunch, in any case, between President Trump and I myself on Japan and U.S. economic relations. We have already agreed that we will have Vice President Pence and Deputy Prime Minister Aso to discuss fully on the economic relations between our two countries. And we are looking forward for the good results to ensue from the debate between the experts. As for the foreign exchange, we will have Secretary of Treasury and Minister of Finance will continue their close communication for the United States to become a great nation. The various roles played by the United States and the responsibility to go with it. The world over is faced with increasing uncertainty. That the United States will become a great America and become a great and strong ally would be good for Japan. And for Japan and U.S. alliance to be further strengthened would be good not only for our two nations, but also contribute to the peace and prosperity of Asia-Pacific, and the United States to become even greater. We will welcome that.
Thank you. I will say that, and you've seen it, ever since I won the election and became president-elect, I've been telling companies, car companies and other companies, many companies, come back into the United States. And they've been coming back in. And big announcements are going to be made over the next short period of time. Some of you already know what those announcements are. We've lost a lot of our factories, a lot of our plants, and those factories and those plants will be coming back, and jobs will be coming back to Michigan and Ohio and Pennsylvania and North Carolina and so many other places where we've lost so many jobs. And those are the people that were so good to me, and now I'm being good to them. So we've had a tremendous number of announcements. We've had Ford and General Motors and many, many others. Intel yesterday made a major announcement, and they did that because of what is happening with our tax structure, which is going along very well, and we'll be having some very big news over the next short period of time. But we are a nation of tremendous potential, and the expression, "Make America Great Again," I will tell you, and I will add very strongly and with great assurity, it will be greater than ever before. And I just want to thank the Prime Minister for a friendship. You know, we developed a great friendship when we met in New York City at Trump Tower. We spoke for a long, long period of time. And when I greeted him today at the car, I was saying, I shook hands but I grabbed him and hugged him because that's the way we feel. We have a very, very good bond, very, very good chemistry. I'll let you know if it changes, but I don't think it will. So I just want to thank the Prime Minister for being here. We're going to be meeting your wife in a very short period of time, and I look very much forward to that. And I want to thank everybody in the room. We're going to have a tremendous relationship, long-term relationship of mutual benefit with Japan. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Yes, certainly. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. From Sankei Shimbun, my name is Takita. I have a question to President Trump. Obama administration, under the rebalance to Asia, have emphasized Asia, but China is taking hardline stance in South China Sea as well as China Sea, and North Korea has went on the missiles and nuclear development. So some countries in Asia are concerned over commitment of United States in Asia. So against this backdrop, as was mentioned earlier, for the Trump administration, for the situations in Asia, how would you respond to the increasing difficulty here? And President, you have repeatedly stated about China taking on the currency, foreign exchange policies which are not good for the United States. Do you think that eventually it will change in the future?
I had a very, very good conversation, as most of you know, yesterday with the President of China. It was a very, very warm conversation. I think we are on the process of getting along very well, and I think that will also be very much of a benefit to Japan. So we had a very, very good talk last night and discussed a lot of subjects. It was a long talk, and we are working on that as we speak. We have conversations with various representatives of China. I believe that will all work out very well for everybody, China, Japan, the United States, and everybody in the region. As far as the currency devaluations, I've been complaining about that for a long time. And I believe that we will all eventually, and probably very much sooner than a lot of people understand or think, we will be all at a level playing field. Because that's the only way it's fair. That's the only way that you can fairly compete in trade and other things. And we will be on that field, and we will all be working very hard to do great for our country. But it has to be fair, and we will make it fair. I think the United States is going to be an even bigger player than it is right now by a lot when it comes to trade. A lot of that will have to do with our tax policy, which you'll be seeing in the not-too-distant future. We'll have an incentive-based policy, much more so than we have right now. Right now, we don't even know, nobody knows what policy we have. But we're going to have a very much incentive-based policy. We're working with Congress, working with Paul Ryan, working with Mitch McConnell, and I think people are going to be very, very impressed. We're also working very much, and this has a lot to do with business, on health care, where we can get great health care for our country at a much reduced price, both to the people receiving the health care and to our country, because our country is paying so much, and Obamacare, as you know, is a total and complete disaster. So we're going to end up with tremendous health care at a lower price, and I think people are going to be extremely happy. Difficult process, but once we get going, and as you know, Tom Price was just approved a few hours ago, so we finally have our secretary, and now we get down to the final strokes. Again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank Mr. Prime Minister. What an honor. What a great honor it is. And let's go to Florida.
President Trump and the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe wrapping up a joint news conference in the East Room of the White House. As far as the president's concerned. He said specifically, as far as the proposed travel ban against 7 mostly Muslim nations, the president said the U.S., his administration, in his words, will continue to go through the court process, and ultimately, I have no doubt, will win that particular case. Gloria, that's one headline out of here. He also said that he has new security measures that he will announce as early as next week to make Americans safe.
So it's unclear. We're not sure at this point what he's referring to. Is he going to rewrite his executive order and continue to take his case through the courts? What is he going to do? Is he going to take it through another court, not take it to the Supreme Court? We really didn't get any specifics here from the president on this. I might also add here that, number one, he seemed to be trying to end this press conference kind of a couple of times. And the only American outlets that were called on were owned by Rupert Murdoch. They were Fox Business and the New York Post. And so no other, and that has happened time and time again in the press briefings we see in the from the briefing room. They're sort of first among equals here. And so no questions were asked. I might also add about General Flynn, which is a very hot topic right now.
The national security.
That was shocking that nothing is asked on that. I mean, his own vice president is very clearly upset with what transpired with regard to General Flynn. Your original point, though, and I think the headline that will continue to be fleshed out throughout the afternoon, he talked about we'll be doing something very rapidly, President Trump said, with regard to our security. That sounded to me like something separate from the legal track they're on with the executive order.
Let me play the clip.
Okay.
Let me play the clip because he was asked in that first question about the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that was a major setback for the president and his advisors. Listen to how he responded.
We are going to keep our country safe. We are going to do whatever is necessary to keep our country safe. We had a decision which we think we'll be very successful with. It shouldn't have taken this much time because safety is a primary reason. One of the reasons I'm standing here today is the security of our country. The voters felt that I would give it the best security. So we'll be doing something very rapidly having to do with additional security for our country. You'll be seeing that sometime next week. In addition, we will continue to go through the court process, and ultimately I have no doubt that we'll win that particular case.
So I wonder, Wolf, whether what he's speaking of there, are there other unilateral things he can do by executive order through the Homeland Security Department around immigration and tighter vetting controls while he's still trying to win this this case that has to do with refugees and other...
It sounds like a double-pronged approach. Right. Jeff Zeleny, our senior White House correspondent, there in the East Room of the White House. Jeff, what's your understanding now, and I know you're speaking to top aides, of the next step in this process in dealing with this travel ban?
Well, if the president did not tip his hand, if you will, to what those next steps are, frankly, because I am told they are still indeed deciding what those are. There is one school of thought here inside the White House and at the Justice Department. They should give a new executive order, essentially write the executive order that he signed 2 weeks ago today and go forward that way. But there are others arguing that that would be a sign of weakness, and that also may be challenged in the courts as well. So the president said he will have something next week. So do not look for any decision yet this afternoon. His legal team here and at Justice will be working throughout the weekend. But I was struck also what the president talked again, as he had earlier this week, about what he sees as the rising terror threat. He says he has seen things that no one else has seen, and he is conflating this yet again to why this executive order is needed. But he did not give any specifics, of course, and his aides, in fact, said there's a steady threat, but there is nothing new necessarily here. But the president not tipping his hand at all. And Wolf, one other thing, just being inside the room here, it was clear to us at the opening statement of this that the president was standing there, but not able to understand likely what the prime minister was saying because he did not have his translator earpiece in. Several members of his staff and the vice president didn't either. It wasn't until after that, after the questions got going, that they seemed to realize that they had these translator devices here. So the president was laughing at the jokes at the beginning about playing golf and other things, but he seemed to be following the cues of some advisors who had these earpieces in. But after the session went on, he did put his in. And there's definitely a warm relationship without a question, and they're going to spend the weekend together down at Mar-a-Lago. Wolf.
Yeah, and the tradition is 2 American reporters ask questions and 2 Japanese, or
Indeed.
if it's another foreign leader, foreign reporters ask questions. That's precisely what happened, although the president tried to end it earlier. I think he was
did.
just, he didn't know, maybe he didn't know there was another Japanese reporter who was scheduled to ask a question. All right, Jeff, stand by. Elise, I'm going to play the soundbite where the president painted a very, very frightful picture based on the national security briefings he's receiving of the threats facing the American people. Listen to this.
I feel totally confident that we will have tremendous security for the people of the United States. We will be extreme vetting, which is a term that I developed early in my campaign because I saw what was happening. And while I've been president, which is just for a very short period of time, I've learned tremendous things that you could only learn, frankly, if you were in a certain position, namely president. And there are tremendous threats to our country. We will not allow that to happen. I can tell you that right now.
That's, Elise, in marked contrast to what the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, told our Jim Sciutto only yesterday. Remember, today is 3 weeks exactly to the day since Donald Trump was inaugurated and became president of the United States. He said specifically there are tremendous threats to our country. We will not allow that to happen. Listen to what Clapper, General Clapper, told Jim Sciutto.
Does the terror threat necessitate the ban from these 7 countries?
Well, I don't believe we, the IC, were aware of any extraordinary threats that we weren't already dealing with.
Does a ban like this, in your view, does it damage U.S. image, but also counter-terror partnership?
Yes, I do worry about those countries in question with whom we do deal and who are reliable partners.
Actually, until 3 weeks ago, he was the director of national intelligence, for about 6.5 years, privy to the most sensitive intelligence information, the most highly classified intelligence information. He offers a pretty different assessment than what President Trump just offered.
And he said you only are president to have this type of information. Well, several weeks ago, President Obama was the president, getting that daily press briefing of the threats, and one would assume that his director of national intelligence would tell him about those threats, and he would have taken action if he needed to. And also, listen to what, the evolution of this. Originally, this was called on the campaign a Muslim ban. Then there was a lot of backlash of that, and that became extreme vetting. Then it became down to these 7 countries. And if you remember, I can't even remember because everything happens every day, but it was either earlier in the week or last week that President Trump said, well, I was thinking about waiting a week or 2. I didn't want it to be so chaotic, but my advisors told me, no, we have to do this right away. And you just heard from Jeff Zeleny say that, some of his aides say that it's not so necessary. So, it's creating this kind of fear, and this, reminds me of that movie, Our Brand is Crisis, that there's a crisis happening in this country, and we have to save it we have to save it right away. However, the intelligence from what we're hearing from officials and what the previous administration does, and members of Congress who are seeing the same intelligence, is not adding up.
But that was the campaign strategy. The campaign strategy was you want to get people to your point of view. You stir the pot, you stoke the fear. And I think what you see the president doing is what we're not used to presidents doing. Presidents don't usually stoke fear. What they usually do is try and comfort people and say, we have it under control.
And there is a threat out there. There is a terror threat that the U.S. is facing. Let's not negate that.
But if he's worried about the public opinion about his policy, what he's going to do and what he's doing is saying to people, you need to believe me. I know more than you do. You should be very afraid. And what we're going to do is fix it.
That's good enough for a campaign strategy. It's not good enough for the courts. The courts need to have some concrete evidence, and there's an opportunity you could provide in a classified setting to the court. You can't just do the schoolyard, I know something you don't know, and say, just trust me. What the courts made clear yesterday in the Ninth Circuit was judicial deference is certainly warranted for presidents in terms of national security, but it's not automatic. And more importantly, just a bald assertion of national security is not going to be carte blanche to violate the Constitution. And so, again, you have the President of the United States saying, listen, there is a real threat, and a credible threat against the United States. Well, the court said, tell us what it is. Give us a reason to reinstate the ban, and he could not.
David, let me read to what the bottom line, what the unanimous decision of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals was last night, going against the president on this very sensitive issue. We hold that the government, meaning the U.S. government, has not shown a likelihood of success on the merits of its appeal, nor has it shown that failure to enter a stay would cause irreparable injury, and we therefore deny its emergency motion for a stay. The President made it clear today we're going to go through the court process. He said, ultimately, I have no doubt we'll win that particular case. It's unclear what he means by that, but this was a major rebuke of the President's travel ban.
Well, it was because the court was pushing back in a couple of areas. One, that they have an opportunity to review it, that the president gets deference on national security, but it doesn't mean that he can't be questioned by the judiciary. And two, what is the specific evidence that requires the executive order? And that has not been forthcoming. Ultimately, the president may indeed be right on the law, which is he may win because the president gets so much deference on national security. But the political realm here, you heard the president talk about, look, there were a lot of people, I'm going to bring jobs back to all these states that voted for me, essentially. Well, he's doing that on the security ban as well. He campaigned on the idea that there's all these bad people overseas and that they're coming to get us. He doesn't have specific evidence for that, but he's making an argument, as are his advisors, that the U.S. is vulnerable like Europe is vulnerable. But that ignores the fact that we have much better safeguards here, particularly for refugees. And he never mentions that point. If you're a Syrian refugee, you can't just get on a plane and come into the country. It takes as long as 2 years.
Yeah.
This is just fear. It's the stoking of fear without any real evidence, and we saw more of it today. And by the way, there's also frustration on his part that he has to answer questions about this when it's off topic.
You know, Laura, I just want your analysis. When he says we'll go through the court process, and he predicts ultimately the administration will win, what are the options? What are the next steps?
Well, he could go en banc, which means he could ask more of justices from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to weigh in, as much as 11 others, to say, anyone else feel differently, give him something to work with. Or he could go right to the Supreme Court and say, listen, can you please reinstate this ban under a standard that says they abused their discretion or they were wrong entirely to even suspend it? But either way, we are not at the merits of the case. It's going to go back to Judge Robart in Seattle District Court to say, all right, what are we working with now? Give me a record to develop. Was there an intent to have a Muslim ban? What is your evidence for that? Let me help you develop that particular case. And all we're talking about now is, was there a likelihood of success? Not a guarantee, but you're right, David. There's a lot of deference given to the President of the United States in the national security arena. But our courts and the Supreme Court entirely has often checked that balance, from denying passports to suspected communists to Japanese internment camp victims. And so there is a very marked history where we question any trampling of the Constitution, even national security.
Do we presume the court would take this, given the fact that there isn't much of a history of this case? I mean, or that it's just too important that they would have to take it? There's not much record.
Well, you know, that's in a case, a Supreme Court loves to have a final decision. They want to have everything.
Yes.
A record means I've got all the transcripts, all the testimony, all the evidence, and I'm just reading all the stuff. But the thing is, even though the Ninth Circuit found that there was standing on behalf of Washington and Minnesota to say they've got a real injury to represent the people of their states, the Supreme Court could still take the case and find there was no standing. And the only precedent we have is that we had Texas in the Dreamers case, where they said, you know, we think we have standing based on having to provide for driver's license to these Dreamers. Well, the Supreme Court took that case, but unfortunately we had 4-4, which means we don't know what they actually ultimately were considering, and they may have found there was no standing. We're at a disadvantage, which is why the court may be ultimately in his favor.
And I just want to point out that one important line in that 29-page report that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals put out, there is no precedent to support this claimed unreviewability, which runs contrary to the fundamental structure of our constitutional democracy, because the Justice Department attorney, in making the oral arguments, said that there was no reviewability, if you will. And in this particular case, the court came down on the other side. Everybody hold on for a moment.